Welcome, everyone. I am really excited about this conversation. Um, just a quick note quick welcome to all the participants. I'm already starting to see some familiar names, which I'm always excited to see, but I'm also seeing some really new names. So welcome to the conversation on impact sourcing. Also, we received some of your questions during pre-registration. Please note that the Q&A tab is always available there for you to ask questions. We might answer some along the way, but we also might leave them to the end. So please actively participate. I do already see one note taker, so hopefully those folks also joined and are part of the conversation. So I'm really excited about this conversation because we're here talking about something really big. We're talking about big, bold commitment of creating 1 million jobs. And this is not just a consulting firm coming in and making PowerPoint slides about this. We've actually already been on the journey. Part of that journey started in 2022, where we made a commitment to creating 500,000 jobs, and we reached that goal a year early. And now we're back wanting to double that. So I'm really excited about this conversation and particularly excited to have this conversation with Ankur, who's a sustainability fellow at Everest Group, and Milan, who's my partner in crime at the Clinton Global Initiative. So let's go to the next slide and get into what does it mean to make these big, bold commitments? Oh, my apologies. First, I'll give you an idea of what we're going to cover today. We're going to talk about what is CGI and where we've made this commitment. Then we're going to get into what the actual commitment is, Impact 1 million. And then we're going to give you a little more data and key trends about what impact sourcing is and why it matters, not just in impacting people's lives, but also to business, and then move on to the Q&A. So Milan, I'm going to get you started on this. And, I'm so excited to have you here and participating in this conversation. You've seen more ideas in action than most of us have seen in Slack messages. Tell us what is CGI and why was it created in the first place?
Thanks so much, Rita and Ankur and the team. I just wanted to start by giving a hats off to Everest Group and all of the leadership for many years now. We have truly been partners in crime, so really appreciate the opportunity to speak a little bit about CGI and some of the solutions that we've helped support and drive. So to answer your question, Rita, this is actually our 20th year anniversary. And just to go way back in time, to the beginning of the 2000s, CGI was born in many ways out of a vision of President Clinton, and obviously with strong support from Secretary Clinton and Dr. Clinton. And from the very beginning, one of the distinguishing dimensions of CGI was amidst sort of many, many convenings and opportunities, including around UNGA Week. So for those who don't know, every year CGI, our annual summit, we call it our annual meeting, coincides with the UN General Assembly, and that was by design. And so with the realization that there have been an abundance of opportunities to bring together leaders from different sectors, private sector, government leaders, NGO leaders, celebrities, et cetera, what would it look like to actually create a foundation and a platform to be able to facilitate and amplify solutions and actually to develop solutions. And so that's something that has been part of our DNA these last 2 decades and a source of great pride. And in the course of our conversation, we'll have a chance to talk about some of those examples. What does it look like to have a big, bold, and impactful commitment to action? But really, it's that emphasis on being able to have leaders not just come together, but to roll up their sleeves and to figure out, what are the obstacles, what are the barriers, how do we come together? And of course, CGI is a core partner in many of these commitments as well. At the end of the day, we're looking to achieve collectively as much impact across communities around the world.
So you started to use the word commitment. We've both been using it, but tell us a little bit more about how the model itself works. And I think that's these 3 C's, right?
Absolutely. So in a nutshell, in one word, a commitment to action is a project, but it's so much more than that. So in the course of sort of on an ongoing basis, as we're thinking about developing partnerships, forging new partnerships, one of our sort of, cornerstone vehicles for change, as I like to describe it, is a commitment to action. And so um, really, we're talking about projects that are driven by really born out of visions, and whether those are from the NGO sector or other sectors, including the corporate sector. Commitment to action is really a project that's aiming to tackle a key global challenge. And as we'll discuss a little bit later, our focus areas currently, and many of this has been sort of since day one, really with a focus on economic inclusion, which is the team that I lead, climate resilience, health equity, humanitarian response, women and girls equity. And so many of our commitments over the last 2 decades have been projects that have been focused on advancing opportunities and really moving the needle on projects that have the ability to improve the lives of communities across that sort of with a nexus to those areas, whether that's financial inclusion, access to capital. We're understanding more and more the intersectionality between some of these areas that I mentioned, and so a lot of our commitments have really focused on taking aim at many of the both structural barriers and also de facto barriers that have been impeding progress across communities. And so, yes, you're right, the 3 Cs. I talked a little bit about the opportunity that CGI provides, and the biggest example each year is our annual summit to convene, but we do that on a year-round basis. And Rita, we really want to acknowledge your leadership again. You've been there front and center in many of those sort of more modest, even virtual convenings, and that's really important. As a commitment maker, that's one of the things that we really undertake, is the ability to create those opportunities to amplify, to really spotlight the great work that's being done. And building connective tissue. I mean, that's really as essential as anything else. Oftentimes, when there is a vision that manifests into a project, that's only the beginning of a journey. And part of our obligation, and it's a great pleasure to be able to play that role, is to bring in, whether those are implementation partners, funding partners, really what are the gaps that really, if addressed, could further bolster the ability of projects to meet their goals. And so that connective tissue is really important. And then the catalytic effect, this happens tangibly, it happens intangibly. Obviously, the ability for us to be supportive in the ways that I mentioned of commitments can go a long way. But we also, as a presidential platform, have a unique ability to be able to amplify both on-site in September, but also on a year-round basis through traditional and social media. And so we are very mindful and put resources towards that sort of amplification effect as well.
Yeah, I think you foreshadowed a little bit of our next slide, which is getting into the areas that we cover, which was great. But maybe you can tell us just, who's alongside us in these kinds of partnerships. Share some ideas or stories of the types of activities that are happening. And I love your focus, obviously, on economic inclusion, because that's what matters to us in our commitment. But give us some ideas of these real change makers that you're working with and facilitating.
Yeah, no, I'd be more than happy to. Thank you. One example that is, and some of these sort of our commitment makers, some are maybe emerging commitment makers, but I wanted to put some emphasis on the actual solutions, and with a mind towards the goal, one of the big goals today, and the work that Everest Group is doing around inclusive hiring. So some of these examples will sort of be within that terrain. Many of you have heard of the CEO Council. They have been partners of ours. It's officially the New York City CEO Jobs Council. And so it's been an interesting and impactful model because, like some of the other institutions we've been engaging, infrastructurally, there has been a role for, in this case, major Fortune 20, Fortune 50 companies to actually be part of the leadership of the council. And one of the big things as a North Star that the council is seeking to do is, hit a target of, somewhere between 100 and 150,000 job placements, achieved in the coming years. And they've also been successful in partnering with community colleges, like in this case, CUNY, and in some cases, SUNY, to be able to create and really forge the ability for some of the corporate partners on their advisory board to roll up their sleeves and to work with educational institutions to make sure that the curriculum that's being sort of achieved and sharpened is very much sort of practical, hands-on, and with an eye towards acquiring those skills that would allow those students, and in many cases we're talking about sort of, again, higher education institutions, so young adults, to be able to thrive in actual jobs that they're able to create within their particular workforces. And so that's really exciting. Another example I'll mention, and you'll see a theme over the course of, I guess, the next hour, is, one of the things that we try to do at CGI is be very mindful of the specific populations that are being targeted. And so, some of our more impactful commitment makers, and one I'll mention is Operation Hope, has been very effective in forging partnerships with HBCUs and other educational institutions and corporate partners to really create opportunities for Black youth to be able to thrive, and in many cases to acquire the skills needed to be able to form their own businesses and to be entrepreneurs. The mentorship piece has been really critical there, just a hands-on, one-on-one focus. And again, at the end of the day, just really an emphasis towards those abilities to achieve economic security through employment, either formal employment or informal employment. We've had in recent years, maybe I'll stop with this example, just kind of round us out for this part. Organizations that have been really driven by inclusiveness for persons with disabilities, including those that are vision impaired. And so we have been working with a group called 110, and they have as corporate partners Merck, IBM, Cisco, and others. And what has been interesting about their work is the creation of literally a platform to be able to sort of bring to bear employment opportunities for particular populations, many of whom are what we call stars, acquiring skills through alternate pathways. But specifically in the area of persons with disabilities, the TAD Foundation, some of you might know, their leadership has also been instrumental with KKR, another corporate partner, and they have done a tremendous job in actually achieving results in terms of job placements for vision impaired individuals. And so those are just a few that give an example. I think you'll see the commonality around partnerships, strategic partnerships, and literally what are those pathways towards economic security.
I love that. And I think you're also alluding to a lot of the kind of work that we're doing in impact sourcing, be it, working with people with disabilities or trying to get into these crevices where people are just getting forgotten about. I think it's amazing. Thank you. Thank you for that overview. So let's now get into what is our commitment, right? So if we can go ahead and go to the next, we'll go ahead and get to the next page, and let me not steal the thunder of our former president Clinton. And let's just quickly watch this video. It's a 3-minute video, and I feel really proud of it.
The COVID-19 pandemic has exposed a national workforce in need of stability. Unemployment levels soared early in the pandemic, and even when businesses began humming again, we saw a mismatch of skills and job openings. While businesses seek an engaged and reliable workforce, many people, particularly in marginalized communities, are excluded from work opportunities that offer them dignity and a decent livelihood. Today, I'm proud to announce a commitment by Everest Group to address this employment challenge in the global services industry. Together with its partners, Everest Group will help businesses hire, train, and retain a more stable workforce through impact sourcing, the hiring of traditionally marginalized workers, including women, young people, economically and socially disadvantaged individuals, and people who are underemployed and unemployed. By committing to impact sourcing, employers have access not just to an expanded talent pool, but also to one that demonstrates lower levels of absenteeism and attrition. Impact sourcing is more cost-effective than outsourcing arrangements, and most important, provides career development opportunities to people with limited employment prospects. In short, these arrangements benefit everyone. Over the next 3 years, Everest Group is committed to helping industry partners grow the impact sourcing workforce from 350,000 to 500,000 full-time equivalent workers. To do this, Everest will work within the impact sourcing ecosystem to develop job readiness programs and encourage incentive programs and hiring mandates that expand opportunities for both employees and employers. The concept of impact sourcing was introduced a decade ago as a way to reduce under and unemployment in developing countries. Now we see it gaining momentum throughout the world as businesses enhance their outreach to talent that has historically been left behind and left out. Going forward, this hiring model has the potential to drive business efficiencies and social justice in any location and any sector. So congratulations to Everest Group on this important commitment to action.
Even though that's a little dated, it is based on our original commitment. I still feel very proud that President Clinton himself found it so compelling that he wanted to record that video. So today our commitment is to double that number, and sharing some insights from the visit or the summit that Milan mentioned. This is from last year, where we were able to let the folks that were participating know that we had already met our commitment and we were making a new one. So there's 1 million people that we want to enable, or 500,000 more by 2030. Our role at Everest Group, even though we're getting the congratulations, is more of a convener. We're not hiring all of these people, so this is why we're doing events like today, to make sure that you know about this event, about this commitment. So if we can advance maybe the next slide, just so you can see some of these amazing people that show up at the event. But then next is really the folks that are with us. And actually, I see a bunch of these people already on the call. I know our very first logo is on the call. We've got AJAC here. Sorry if I'm missing anybody. I think there's a few others that I saw on the call. We talked about working with people with disabilities. Vindhya, 85% of their workforce are people with disabilities. And we've now started to get companies on this logo page that are enablers. Like Edge is looking at things like how is diversity actually getting calculated and measured and benchmarked. And then we have buyers of these impact sourcing services. You see our own logo on there, and you see Equal Innovation. They are actually hiring companies where they know there are impact workers. So there's just a plethora of companies that are with us. There's very large very large companies like Teleperformance and Infosys, and then smaller providers that are really specializing in this. So hopefully this is giving you a good idea. Now I want to get into a couple of stories to put faces and names to these activities. So I want to start with my own experience. I've actually been really privileged to meet impact workers in almost every continent. This was a particular one that was very special to me after meeting Layla more than a decade ago and knowing SamaSource for all these years. In November, I was finally able to visit one of their enterprises, one of their centers. And I met this young man who decided that he wanted to take me to see where he lives. And the picture that you see on the left is where his home is. And in fact, he explained to me that his home before he started at SamaSource was in an even more precarious place. So what was exciting about meeting this young man was he talked about how not only had his life changed, but he was able to change the lives of his family. He's now married, has a child. We're going to be publishing a video soon inside that house that he talked about. And what is he doing? He is training data for self-driving cars and other AI ML enabled activities and making a difference in his life. So just in this picture alongside me, next to me is one of the people that's actually running the center. In the middle is one of the supervisors at the center, and then on the left is the young man that I interviewed. And it was just so powerful. The other thing that I've been able to do and been privileged to do is bring my colleagues to impact centers, impact worker centers, or meet impact workers. And so, Ankur, I'm going to pull you in at this point finally to talk about your experience of going to the Bronx in our own neighborhood. Ankur and I live in New York and New Jersey. We went to the Bronx together. And yeah, if we can advance to the next page and tell us about your experience.
Sure, sure. Thank you. Thank you, Rita. Pleasure to be part of this important discussion. I think when it comes to me, impact sourcing it's all about people uh, and the impact that is being created on the ground, right? So I had the opportunity, I think, in early part of this year to visit the Bronx Center of People Sure, and it was an eye opener, I think, across many counts, right? So first of all, I had the opportunity to meet two gentlemen, right? So those are also on this picture. If you look at the slide, Aviro and Kevin, and listening to their stories, how from where they started and where they are today. So for instance, Aviro, he was a security guard in New York. He built his life as part of he joined the Bronx Center of People. Sure, he learned skills, and now he is the cohort manager, right? He's now teaching other students, other people uh, about things, about skills like AI, ML, software engineering, so that they can make their lives, right? Similarly, Kevin also was from a humble background. He joined this particular center, I think, a year back, and now he's on road to become uh, an analyst with Accenture, right, which is a technical or technological focused company. So first of all, listening to the stories and meeting people and how the people's lives are impacted by some of these initiatives was really an eye opener for me. Second, I think when we think about impact sourcing, it also comes out at something where people are being hired or people are being involved just for the sake of transactional jobs, right? But when you actually visit some of these sites, when you speak to people, when you look at the trainings modules that they have, you realize that it's not only about uplifting people. These individuals are also able to fill a gap that exists in our industry today, right? And some of those jobs are very skill centric, right? So software engineering, uh, for example. So I think for me, visiting the Bronx Center, that was my first site visit. Uh, the opportunity to meet these two folks and also opportunity to learn how impact sourcing is really creating change in the people's life was something which is extraordinary, right? So yeah, I think that's my story. And thank you so much to Rita, for enabling that visit.
Oh my God, my pleasure. What's also exciting about this, um, actually, we're gonna stay on that slide for a second. Um, Sorry about that. So what was really exciting is that now when we look at Kevin on this slide, you see that he's a junior developer. He was still one of the cohorts that was getting trained. Today he's working at Accenture. So this is not, this is a real ITO house. And they're doing really amazing work. I got the opportunity to go to their Founders Day, where Accenture executives showed up and really really just encourage this group. So I just think it's very exciting. So this is not even your traditional BPO operation. This is an ITO operation. They're doing Accenture's work and actually delivering quality work, so much so that Accenture then wants to hire these guys and women too. I think it was a really, really exciting place to be. So that said, I think we should shift gears now and get into the meat and bones of what is this pledge. Sorry, we should be on a blue page. That's what is the Join the Impact 1 Million pledge. I hope that's the page you have. Talking to our tech team. So can we go back one slide? Okay. Sorry, this is not the updated one, but it's fine. Want to make sure that everyone who's on the call who's not part of this, and even those that are part of this, know what it is that we're doing and can help us recruit more and more and more. So first, help share your impact sourcing activities. We're just about to put out an RFI where we're collecting all this information. We've annually been putting together a state of the market, which is the data that you're going to see going forward. Next, designate somebody, one particular person that is going to be your key point of contact. Third, be public about this information. Share your logo with us. We have a logo page that we shared with you earlier. Just shout it from rooftops. And then last, recruit the stakeholders that are involved in this process. Even if they're not intentionally doing this work, involve them so that we can bring them onto this ecosystem and create more jobs and make it more intentional. So that's my pitch for joining the Impact 1 Million Pledge. And I think going forward into our presentation, you're going to see why this is such a relevant activity. So if we can go to the first poll, for those that are joining us, we would like to understand how relevant is this activity to your organization or the organizations that you work with. Is it highly relevant? You're already working on it. Is it somewhat relevant that you see it on your radar? You're actually not focused on it. There's a lot of other things that you're focused on. And then last, are you just here to learn more and you really have no idea where this is gonna play? Ankur, while this poll is loading, while folks are answering the question, I think it would be neat to understand you coming from the mainstream part of Everest Group's business lines in healthcare. What made you excited about joining the fellowship and being part of this conversation?
Sure, sure, Rita. So Rita, and for the benefit of people who have joined, I have been part of Everest for the last 8 to 9 years, and I joined our sustainability fellowship group, which is a group of highly talented individuals, right, motivated by doing something for ESG initiatives. So I joined the sustainability fellowship in January of this year. Now, it's an interesting question. What motivated me? I would say a couple of things, right? First, uh, when you work in a highly ambitious industry, sometimes you lose focus or you lose connect with the people part of of your personality, right? So one of the things that I always wanted to do was to learn other stories and also possibly influence or impact others in doing in doing things maybe which I did as part of my life, which can help them in uplifting themselves, right? So I think connected to getting connected to people and influencing some, or providing some influence to them was, I think, one of the key reasons why I joined the Sustainability Fellowship. Second was, I think we are doing such an interesting work as part of this group. Uh, I also wanted to embed some of that work in the other teams and the other research that we are doing, because it's such an interesting topic. Everybody's interested in it, but sometimes it's 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 difficult to have or talk about it in each and every, let's say, the service lines that we have or the work that we are doing, right? So one of my key priorities or discussion that I had with Rita was to how can we make sure that the work that we are doing or the concept that we have in impact sourcing, how can we talk about that in each and every corners of the work that we are doing? So Rita, I think that were the two key reasons why I joined the fellowship, and yeah.
Very inspiring and very effective. I think we're actually doing it. So Milan, as a newbie to our impact sourcing work in a sense, what do you think of our results here? I'm pretty excited that we already are, talking to some of the folks that already know about it, but I think we've also got some folks that need to learn more.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, I would just start by saying anything that CGI can do to be helpful, and a lot of that goes back to our 3 Cs. And so one of the benefits that we really have is such a broad, not just domestically, but globally. I know obviously everything Everest Group is doing is very global as well. So, one of I think maybe I'll use this opportunity to do a little bit of a plug. This year, as part of our 20th anniversary, in September, we plan on creating structures that we've seen that have been successful over the years. And I briefly mentioned this earlier, but to the extent that we want to create an agenda that is really conducive towards, companies and organizations to both be able to learn more about what have been some of the best practices, what have been some of the strategies that have been helpful to overcome fears or doubts, or even operational challenges. We'll definitely put up our hand and say that we're willing to help maybe swing some of those responses more in the positive direction. But thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Milan. All right, Ankur, I think for the next few slides, I'm handing the reins over to you to talk about what is impact sourcing, how big is it, what is its effect, why should the folks that, aren't sure and are just starting to dabble do in this. So if we can go to the next slide, and I'm handing the reins over to you.
Sure, sure. Thank you, Rita. Now, I think so like all other industries, impact sourcing is also undergoing disruption, right? So we talk about technology, AI, or the political climate. The disruptions are happening at every level. Even then, if you look at the growth in the impact sourcing workers, right? So it's an impressive, as of 2024, we have almost 500,000 impact sourcing workers, employed in the global services industry, which is a significant number, and that's growing at almost 10 to 14% every year. So clearly, it showcased that impact sourcing is here to stay. There are organizations across different levels, right? Enterprises across different industries who are actively investing in it. And we have an entire ecosystem of service providers, impact sourcing specialists, which are enabling enterprises to help them in their impact sourcing initiatives, right? Uh, Before I move to the next slide, I also want to highlight an important data point that when it comes to impact sourcing, there's a misnomer in the industry that it's only limited to a limited number of impact sourcing specialists who are investing or who are doing everything when it comes to impact sourcing. But if you look at the data, the traditional service providers, right, they employ more than 85% of impact sourcing workers as of today. The specialist, the percentage for specialists only stood at around 15%, right? Uh, so clearly, it's something which is happening across the board. Large service providers are actively invested in this, and we do see impact sourcing market growing even in the future. Uh, uh, so now going to next slide. Now, another interesting point is so if you look, another, I would say, myth associated with impact sourcing is that it's only associated with certain industries or certain kinds of work, right? But if you look at this analysis, uh, the adoption of impact sourcing, uh, it has grown across industries, right? Be it insurance, retail, manufacturing, technology. Surprisingly, technology is one of those industries where impact sourcing has grown fastest, right? Clearly showcase and clearly busting the myth that that impact sourcing workers are suited for low complexity or low skilled industry. So clearly there is growth happening across the board, including in high complexity, high skill industry, such as technology and FGT as well. I'll also tell a story, how important impact sourcing is in some of these industries. So as part of my work in healthcare and life sciences, Sometimes I get to speak with with people who are responsible for supporting healthcare enterprises in running RFPs. So once I was having a discussion with one of my good friends, and he told me that in one of his last RFP engagement with one of the top five health insurance company in the US, one of the vendors was disqualified from the RFP process because there was no diversity uh, in the presentation team that was in the room. So clearly, it is a very important initiative, important investment that everyone, especially enterprises, need to make to not only get benefit out of it, but also to avoid situations like this.
Ankur, I think we had a really interesting question that is related to the data on this page from booking.com. So we do see travel and hospitality here. The question was, how do you upsell this to contact center operations teams?
Sure. Very interesting question, Rita. Now, when we look at contact center, right? I think one of the biggest issues that contact center industry is struggling with is attrition, right? You speak with any stakeholder responsible for sourcing, right? They always say that attrition is our biggest issue, and sometimes it takes 6 months to train agents to do certain kind of work. So that's a very big problem in this industry.
Yep.
Now, the good thing associated with impact sourcing is if you look at the stability of an impact sourcing workforce, research after research has shown that impact sourcing workforce is typically more stable than BPO operations or other contact center operations, right? So clearly, uh, there are benefits associated with the industrial like contact center, and one of the ways in which we can upsell this is by highlighting the impact that is creating, right? So clearly, providing a more stable workforce is a direct impact, right? Uh, Second, if you look at an industry like contact center, customer experience, uh, employees or people join these industries also for the brand and employee value proposition associated with it, right? So people want to work with the likes of let's say TPs or the founders of the world because they have a brand associated with them. Now, impact sourcing also helps in enhancing the employee value proposition associated with a brand, right? Clearly, when people see that there are certain organizations who have a better brand value, uh, you know their 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 ability or their chance of become associated with such organizations become significantly higher, right? So again, a direct impact where you can enhance your employee value proposition by engaging in impact sourcing. Finally, I would also say that now we are living in times where cost pressures are on each and every industry. Uh, Typically, in even in our research, we have seen that impact sourcing associated sourcing or procurement is typically more cost advantages as compared to typical BPO, outsourcing or offshoring, right? So there are there are clear
And
impacts
cost
with
advantageous because of quality, because of lower turnover,
absolutely.
not because you're paying them less. Oftentimes they stick around longer, so you start to pay them more. But yeah, absolutely. Sorry to interrupt you, Ankur. I'm
No
a
worries.
little bit worried about time because I know we have a lot to show, and we also have a lot of questions. So I'm gonna ask us to kind of quickly go through the next slide, and for those that are on the webinar, we will be sharing these slides, so don't worry about reading everything. We want to make sure that you understand that this is definitely a global activity and that the clients that are being served are for sure global. So I think that's another really important part of the geographic mix of impact sourcing, that it's not just the so-called, domestic clients. With that in mind, I'm sorry to rush you, Ankur, but I want to go ahead and make sure that the folks that are on the call understand that we have a special offer for them today. If you want to get into more of these details, if we can go to the next slide, if you want to get into the details of what is impact sourcing, how can it benefit you, whether you're a provider, you're a buyer, or you're, like my friend David, who's on the call, who's part of this ecosystem that's helping to make the space a lot more interesting and viable. He's doing upskilling for mid-management. Please click on the link in your chat and let us know that you're interested, and we can offer up a complimentary 30-minute session on what is it that impact sourcing is. And with that, I'm going to go into our next poll. So what would most motivate you, your organization, to adopt or expand your impact sourcing work? Do you see it as accessing untapped talent? Do you see it as aligning to your sustainability goals? Is it about cost competitiveness? Is it something that your executive leadership is pushing? Or are you still trying to learn? And we probably should have made this one a multi-choice question. Ankur, I'm going to come back to you in all of these myths that you've been busting about this work. Which is it that you think is going to probably be the most important factor that folks are going to say?
So I think my prediction is that untapped talent is something which is high on priority for every enterprise leader out there, right? Yes, there's a supply glut right now, but at the same time, when it comes to high skill uh, individual requirements, that's also at one of the highest levels that we have ever seen in the global services industry, right? So my prediction is the access to untapped talent.
Right. Let's see the results. And as we look at those results, there you go, Ankur. You were in three-way tie, but still the one of the tippy tops. Milan, I wanna put you on the spot for a second. I think you mentioned the CEO Council and other initiatives. Who do you think is really walking the talk on looking at these motivated, inclusive workforces?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And one of the points that I wanted to sort of touch on, I think this came up earlier, is the retention aspect as well. And so, I wanted to start by giving an example of JP Morgan Chase. And this is a partnership that has been relatively new and a commitment maker from last year. But one of the things that JP Morgan Chase has been able to do is work with an institution called Commonwealth to really be able to crystallize the business case to enhance retention and other business gains by investing more in financial inclusion and empowerment, and even expanding workplace benefits for when their commitment was over 2 million companies, largely medium sized, that have a high proportion of LMIs and also a high proportion of BIPOC and other sort of marginalized communities. And so very much with that guiding principle in terms of, again, the populations looking strategically at workforces. But in this case, they really understood and have been bold about sort of thinking ahead, not just about the hiring, but also about the retention. Strictly sort of walking the walk in a hiring standpoint. I mean, I sort of give another example. We haven't talked yet about immigrant communities. I think there's a recognition, and this response is more global, more domestic, but certainly holds true in other regions. But the Congressional Budget Office estimates that projected, literally trillions of dollars in economic gains and contributions from immigrant communities. So putting aside any sort of ideological notion, like empirically speaking, this is a robust population with particular skill sets and particular opportunities to drive workforces, to drive economic gains for businesses. And so, our partners, and Rita, you and I remember from a couple of weeks ago, we had the opportunity to address the Business Council for sort of a joint venture between Welcome.us and World Education Services, with some emphasis on refugee and other immigrant populations. And so again, there's different ways that we're seeing businesses across sectors really say, okay, we're going to be joining structures. We might not be able to snap our fingers and sort of operationalize everything, but how do we take an incremental approach towards moving sort of in that direction? So I did want to mention those institutions. And I mean, this is another population that hasn't come up, but I believe they actually might be partners of Everest Groups, but Eclairo really joined a commitment to action a couple of years ago with what at the time we were calling an Older Americans Employment Platform. Now they go by Hello Jeevan, but this is really with the backdrop of the sort of demographic shift. Again, this is also a US-based example, but we're seeing it sort of almost the reverse in Africa, where sort of 2/3 of the population working age is expected to be, under, let's say, the age of 30. In the US, over the age of 55. We're already getting there. I think everyone recognizes the broad sort of ramifications. But from an impact sourcing, from an inclusive hiring standpoint, I use that as an example of really a commitment to be able to tailor skills training opportunities towards those skills that are likely to be maybe have deficits vis-a-vis certain populations based on just generational realities, but also a substantial portion of that population has expressed an interest in seeking part-time employment. So what are those types of jobs that are conducive to working remotely, part-time income security, and addressing skill deficits? And so again, it's layer upon layer, but I think the most impactful solutions that we've seen are those that are really looking strategically at addressing the needs and the opportunities.
I love that. I love that. And our slide here is sort of a summary of what we see as why. And you've heard all of those examples. And just to double down on these different communities that you're talking about, Milan, I'm just coming back from being in Jordan, which is a country where they are the second highest, let me get this right, second highest per capita refugee communities in the world. And they're looking at impact sourcing from that perspective. And how is it that they become more inclusive of refugee communities that are coming into their country with skills, right? This is not just a charitable activity where they need to bring somebody who up all the way, but it's literally people that already have skills, but just don't have access to these jobs because they've had to leave the countries that they're from. So, we're with you completely. So Ankur, I want to move us forward a little bit quicker just because we are running out of time with just 10 minutes. We have started to get a bunch of questions around AI. And if you can help us untangle these questions. So, we have a bunch of slides here about it, but I think one question that we got from a really interesting group called the International Trade Center saying, how is it that emerging markets are going to deal with AI and agentic AI? We also got a question from Accenture asking about how do these initiatives then fit into sustainability activities. Walk us through these slides. I think our slides answer some of these questions.
Sure, sure. So Rita, I think when it comes to AI, every organization, be it in impact sourcing or other industries, need to adapt and then adopt, right? So, and some of these slides say the same, right? So when it comes to AI deployment or AI applicability in impact sourcing, especially in offshoring locations like India and Philippines, right, where there's a concern that how it can impact the already engaged population. I think a couple of things that we are seeing some of the organizations working on, right? One, AI is not only about it's not a tool which can take your job. It's also a tool which can help you reskill your existing employer, right? So how you can effectively use AI to reskill some of your existing workforce. I think that's something which a lot of organizations which are based out of India, Philippines, and other other emerging geographies are focusing on. Second, I think a large part of impact sourcing is also about creating a governance structure, where you can uh, not only track some of the goals which organizations have, but also act on some of those, right? So AI is also something which many organizations are using it to track their business, impact sourcing and sustainability goals, and then also acting onto these. And in many of many of the actions that they're taking, impact sourcing is again a key to that, right? Uh, Third, I think when it comes to impact sourcing, a large part of where impact sourcing really creates a difference is uh, are the gaps where traditional workforce doesn't exist, right? For instance, let's say I am a organization based out of US and I need somebody who can speak Portuguese, and I need those workforce at a particular cost, right? I don't have a lot of money to spend. So now agentic AI, AI can help you train these employees across the globe, right? So I think many of these organizations are using AI to reskill their existing workforce. They're using it to track and act on the goals that they have, and also to find innovative ways to use global workforce uh, to mitigate AI as a disruptive force.
Excellent. Now, I think you've got some suggestions for those that are implementing AI tools. So let's go on to the next 2 pages on the areas of investment, as well as what some of those solutions are going to actually do for us. Take it away,
Sure,
Encore.
absolutely, Rita. So now I think when it comes to AI, there are multiple areas where it can be deployed. Some of the easier ones include translation and transcription, right? Now, there are industries which have need for translation and transcription tools, and AI plays perfectly into that, right? Second, recruitment. You can use AI to identify the right kind of workers that you need. Uh, uh, the third is training. We have talked about it, how AI can be used to reskill the current employee base that you have. Uh, Information summarization, right? So all of us are using ChatGPT in some shape and form. Even at a organization level, AI can be used to summarize information, cull out relevant insights. Trend identification, policy identification is another use cases which are associated with uh, AI when it comes to impact sourcing. Go to the next slide. And again, I think some more details about what we have already talked about. So I'll skip this slides, but Rita, if there are any questions, I think we can pick those up.
Yes, we do have a few more questions. And this one I think is really interesting and might be something that all three of us could share. And this came from us from Capgemini. If you could share one thing in common which has helped so far in goal achievement, which works across cultures and geographies. And I can get us started. I think the one word answer to this is actually being intentional. I think when what we've seen as success is when there's an in-depth analysis of who's getting excluded, how are they getting excluded, and then how do we include them in an intentional way, but also make sure that they are successful in those roles. We've seen examples of companies say, we're going to recruit solo parents, and in order to make them enabled, we're going to double the number of sick days that they have. And then there's, n number of examples when we talk about people with disabilities, we talk about tools that are going to enable them if needed. Sometimes there is no necessity for tools. It's just actually opening the door. So Milan, do you have some thoughts on how impact sourcing itself can be enabled, especially across geographies and cultures?
Yeah, I mean, my one word answer, just in terms of, lowest common denominator, one of my answers at least would be sort of localization. And I know that's a concept that's thrown around a lot, but I think in this area we've really seen one example is Jobs for the Future. I think many might know they're one of the larger sort of workforce agencies in the US. And, their commitment, just to illustrate kind of the approach of localization, is to really be able to fund regions that are likely to have. So again, what does the data tell us in those regions in terms of populations that, could really be in a position to fill jobs across sectors? And what does it look like to invest in local community-based organizations, practitioners, corporate or corporate adjacent institutions, educational institutions, to really sort of build that ecosystem, to take a panoramic approach towards really sizing up the population, some of the deficits and opportunities with actual employment opportunities. So that would be my contribution: localization.
I love it. And one more question that we got from Carrie Hallard, who's the CEO of GSA UK, which I think it's a continuing theme that she's talked about in the past as well. And Ankur, I'm going to pull you in, putting your analyst hat on this one. Should we create a framework or a standard for impact sourcing, just to avoid, people saying they're doing impact sourcing, but they're really not? Um, I think there's been some attempts in this area, and I think we have a lot of incredible tools or proxies for what we would consider sufficient, say, having a B Corp certification or the EDGE certification that we talked about earlier. But obviously, we're collecting a lot of data and we're understanding what's happening on the ground. What do you think about the necessity to create standards?
Sure. So Rita, I think my point of view is that having a framework to police, I don't think that would work. But having a framework uh, to enable an organization to track their goals and then act on it, I think I agree with Kerry here that I think that's something which we should have in the industry, right? So something which can help buyers of impact sourcing as well as providers of impact sourcing really track uh, the outcome that they're delivering and what commitments are they making to the organization, right? So I'll keep it short. So something which is there to police anyone, I don't think that would work in the industry, but something which is there to govern or track, absolutely.
I love that. Yeah, and Milan, I'll pull you in. I know we have just 1 minute, but to my mind, part of the reason we don't want something too structured is that when we think about exclusion, we can there's just so many ways in which people are getting excluded. What do you think about like a standard or a framework to make sure they're included? Is that even possible?
Yeah, I mean, I would always caution against a one size fits all approach. And I think that's why some of my responses have been sort of in that direction. And a little bit of it might be stating the obvious, but I think that you're absolutely right. Those barriers might vary. Some of those barriers are affected directly by the policies that we're seeing nationally and globally. So a lot of it, I think that the hardest part at times is anticipating where are we going to be 3 years from now, 10 years from now. The data tells us one thing, but there's no way for the data to have a crystal ball to sort of understand. So that's where the sort of the human sort of subjectivity comes in, to be able to understand like what are those population trends. And then of course, looking at the same time around industry trends as well. And we talked about AI. I'm really glad that came up, because some of the more impactful solutions that we've seen have been either through investments or actually leveraging technology in areas that we know. Sadly, we know that there's a rural divide, there's a rural digital divide, a rural economic. So, and that is something that, just to come full circle, for CGI has been a priority. And so I think it applies here. That's something that it's an opportunity for us to really be able to say, okay, where are those gaps? What are the implications of those gaps? And who are the populations impacted? Because again, even with sort of the rural reality, one doesn't want to be too sort of monolithic in conceptualizing what that looks like for different populations. So yeah.
I want to be respectful of people's time. I know we're a minute over the hour. I really appreciate both of you sharing your knowledge, your experience, your expertise. I appreciate everyone who joined us. We've put in a link to the page where you can receive President Clinton talking about this initiative. You can also click on Connect with Us to join this journey. We have 1 million people that we want to impact. And we're writing about it, we're talking about it, but the folks that we really need to join and make this happen are the ones that are on this call with us. So please do join me in thanking Milan and Ankur, and join us on this journey. Thank you.
Thank you all.